Why stop gardening because it's winter? Imagine being able to garden every day of the year, having the benefits of a sunny day without the risk of sunburn.
Knowing what's going into your food from seed to harvest. You can at Green Thumb Gardening and Hydroponics. It's easy, educational, nutritious, and fun for the whole family.
Let GTG Hydroponics show you how to garden in any space indoors or out with interactive living science projects for home or school.
Visit Green Thumb Gardening in person at the corner of Route 15 and Park Street in Underhill, Vermont.
Get hooked on hydroponics today.
Hi, my name is Josie Green and I'm your host for this episode of Mountain Views, where we visit Chris Cleary of On the Rocks Stone Sculpture and Eric Swanson of Vermush, a Vermont mushroom farm. Today I'm here with stone carver Chris Cleary. We previously visited him throughout a few weeks period as he worked on a sign for the Jericho Elementary School. The sign is modeled after the historical elementary school, which is currently the Jericho Town Hall that also underwent a major restoration at the same time. So what's your background in stone sculpture and how'd you get started?
My father was a stonemason. All through my growing up, I would go to quarries with him and gather stones and play with his scraps. Then he started a stone company in about 1990, 92 maybe. And I was his fabrication guy. I would do his cutting, polishing. He taught me a lot, how to take on projects we wouldn't normally, people wouldn't normally take on as stone carvers. And then about 7 years ago, I went full-time with my business. I had enough orders to take the plunge, that's kind of where I'm at. More or less self-taught, but my father taught me quite a bit.
Do you see your work as a continuation of his, or do you see it as just a completely new branch of stone sculpture?
A different branch entirely, yeah, much more architectural in his aspect, or his case, whereas in my case it's more art and in some cases practical.
So what's On the Rocks all about?
On the Rocks is a small home studio I have. I make lots of art for shows, either garden stones, ornaments, some three-dimensional sculpture like this stuff over here, and I bring them to craft shows, usually just in Vermont. I have a following of people that buy my stuff as gifts as well through all the advertising I've done through the years. So that's, with the exception of a lot of custom work that I do, that's what my business is all about. I do quite a bit with diamond saws for cutting the stone. The shape of the silhouette of the school sign that I did was all done with diamond saws. And hammers and chisels, obviously. It's kind of and I do a lot of sand blasting, or sand carving, people call it. It's a rubber resist process. The stone is covered with rubber. I remove the area that I want to carve, and then the rest is protected by the rubber. So that's how I'm able to do the lettering and the finer detailed work, like on the sign as well. It's kind of like high-speed erosion.
Can you run through the process of the design and fabrication of the Jericho Elementary School sign?
My son went to Jericho Elementary School at the time that I made the sign. Someone from the parent-teacher organization approached me about needing a new sign with a reader board underneath so that they could make announcements for the Parent-Teacher Association. And obviously, stone was what they chose because they came to me. So we started out with, some general sketches, pictures of other signs in the neighborhood, in the community. And then one of the men on the board, the sign board, there was a whole committee. Vicki Graff, who was the principal, quite a few other people were on the board. It was real, everybody had their own say. Even people in the community, like the woman who owns Snowflake Chocolates was there. And one of the men on the board had an idea of making the sign resemble the town hall, which is the old schoolhouse. So he gave me his little sketch of what he thought it might look like, and I went back to my studio, put it on graph paper, thought it out a little more, and proposed that to them. At that point, everybody was pretty enthusiastic, so I produced a mock-up, a 1:3 scale model of the sign, and brought that to them. I was thinking we were going to need to come up with funding and grants and whatnot to make this happen, and I figured a model is the best way to do that. It turned out that it was just what we wanted. We went ahead, funding became available through community help, and we went forth by ordering the stone. And as soon as I received the stone, we began.
I started out with a raw 5-inch stone. It had been cut to the partial perimeter. I had to finish out the cuts, and then at that point we had just the silhouette. The bell tower was entirely separate. I had to cut all of those details in by hand with a diamond saw, but by hand. And then at that point, I prepared the entire surface with a frosting process to make it kind of cast images better and look a little more natural. And at that point, I applied the rubber, and I actually hand cut the letters into the rubber resist for the sign, because larger letters are just easier. You have a lot more control when you do it by hand. Then I sandblasted it, and at that point, I cleaned out the letters a little bit with hammers and chisels to make sure there were no imperfections in the lettering, and then at that point I painted it, painted the letters at least. And from there I took the bell tower on as its own separate entity, and I had to create the image for the bell, enlarge that, lay that onto the rubber resist on a piece of paper, and then I cut that with an X-Acto knife and removed that. Then sandblasted the bell tower.
We drilled all of the holes to make sure that when we set it onto the posts, it had pins going from the post up into the sign itself, and the bell tower we had 2 pins as well, and everything had to line up good there and be epoxied in. Next was, one of the most important parts was actually setting the posts themselves, getting the concrete poured underneath. It was, I think we were 6 feet deep. We poured a 2-foot slab and then boxed in the legs into concrete and then backfilled everything. Quite a bit of work, and we had quite a bit of help from the community on that process. So. And then at that point, it was setting the sign, favorite part. So.
Do you approach technical work and artistic work differently?
I have to say that my technical work ends up still being artistic in some respects, in that I use levels, I use squares, and I use tape measures, but I always step back and question them first. Can't always trust a level. So in a lot of my stone carving that I do, I'm using a lot of natural stone, not necessarily the cut fabricated granite like on the school sign. So in that case, I've had to train my eye to work around irregularities, slopes of the stone, different contours. Sometimes level just doesn't look right. I would say about 50 to 60% is commission work. I work at night, and I work on Saturdays and Sundays as well. So that's how I'm able to produce the body of work that I like to do. I make it a point to try and do all of my orders 9 to 5 like everybody else.
Besides the sign at the elementary school, do you have any other work that's on display around Jericho or any place in the surrounding countryside that people could go visit?
I have a community park down the road, Mob's Community Park, if you will, that has a large stone bench that I have down there. It was a memorial for a woman. Her husband commissioned it, saying that even in death she would want to share with the community. So we brought it down there with a pair of draft horses and about a half mile into the woods. Set the bench. We had a lot of community help there as well, and people go down there and use it all the time. There's a nice path worn to it. It's a very nice project. So. It has a labyrinth on it. The woman was into walking labyrinths, so this one's what you'd call a finger labyrinth. So you're able to do the meditative process with your finger. Also, there's the St. Michael's Teaching Gardens has quite a bit of my work there. They have a couple of tidal stones, a few benches, and a thing I call the word garden, which is 350 words on stones, all different colors and textures, different fonts as well. And people go and rearrange them in this gravel area they have set up there. It's really fun to see how much it gets used. It puts art to a whole nother level for me. The word garden became an entity because of having the leftover rubber resist in the process and wanting to use it for something. You'd have all these neat words carved in, like true love and happiness and best dog ever. So it was hard to want to throw those away. It seems a little blasphemous, so we just started playing around with it, and then it became so much fun that it grew and became a purchased item. So.
And what do you see for the future of On the Rocks?
Eventually, I'd love to have a larger shop with all of the tools I need, but for the future of On the Rocks, I would like to see a little more of a national presence. I'd like to get out to galleries around the country and not necessarily stay here in Vermont all the time. Vermont's a great, great place to be an artist, a very, very supportive community, but on that note, there is a lot out there too.
Today I'm here with Eric Swanson of Vermush, a Vermont mushroom company. We've been following Eric into the woods over a few mushroom seasons, and he's been showing us some of the mushrooms that he picks. So Eric, how'd you get started with mushrooms?
You know what, traveling around the country, I discovered that wildcrafting and foraging for mushrooms is really huge on the West Coast, and I'm trying to kind of bring some of that here on the East Coast. Along with the fact that mushrooms have a 300% biological efficiency, that's what really got me interested in fungi.
What's biological efficiency?
So if a mushroom grows on a substrate, to make math easy, if the substrate weighed 10 pounds, you should get 30 pounds of mushrooms from your host substrate. So Hence,
Where does all that extra matter come from? Okay.
Is it? That's great. It is interesting. It's just how mushrooms are formed. It's how the fruit bodies are formed out of the mycelium, and yeah, it is cool that that they can do that. Unlike vascular plants, so like corn, for example, takes many months, and you get this one thing that grows a couple ears. And it just seems kind of wasteful and inefficient compared to mushrooms.
What is Vermush?
Vermush is basically Vermont and mushrooms mushed together, and it is a made-up word, but it is also my business that I established back in 2003. So I forage for mushrooms in the Green Mountain state of Vermont, and I will bring them to high-end restaurants and establishments such as Basin Harbor Club, Hen of the Wood Restaurant, Michael's on the Hill, and these high-end establishments will use some of my products in their food. Chanterelles, black trumpets, oyster mushrooms are probably at the top of the list. Here in Vermont, though, we do find matsutakis, hedgehog mushroom, hen of the woods, chicken of the woods, quite a lot of different species, probably 28 or more, gourmet.
Do you have a favorite mushroom?
I do. The chicken of the woods is probably my favorite mushroom. Looks, taste, texture, absolutely like chicken. If you know anything about it, it does taste just like chicken, doesn't it?
It does, like white meat.
Yes. It even rips like chicken. People say carob tastes like chocolate. If you've ever tried carob, it tastes nothing like chocolate. I'm telling you, the chicken mushroom tastes just like chicken. The chicken mushroom dries excellent and reconstitutes fairly well.
Oh, wow.
So like you could reconstitute it with like white wine or in water, but white wine would be better, I think. Give it a kick.
Have you ever experienced any liability concerns as you've been selling mushrooms?
You know what, this is probably one of the reasons why I established the business. I have federal, state tax EIN numbers, insurance, liability, $1 million liability coverage. You know, it kind of sets me apart from other people that might just go into the woods, come out with a backpack full of mushrooms, and try to sell them to the establishments, which they can. Anyone can go into the woods and pick any mushroom right now in Vermont, Northeast, and bring them to any establishment. It's not their job to identify them. They usually just slap a sticker on it, $19.99 a pound, and throw it on the shelf. And I discovered one time going into a co-op that they were selling wild crafted oyster mushrooms, and they weren't oyster mushrooms, they were another species. And I brought it to the attention of the produce manager, and so it's that scenario that could very well, the mushrooms that they had on the shelf weren't dangerous, they were edible. But you could see where the problem will possibly come into play. Even right now, this year in New Hampshire, there's been 15 poisonings from people wildcrafting mushrooms. So it's letting you know that the interest is gaining, but I think that the education behind it needs just a little bit more improvement. Or people just need to slow down, you know, cross-reference between 2 or 3 different field guides, and then at the end, if they still don't know, they can seek advice either online or in libraries. There's always a mushroom club in every state, so you know there's people out there willing to help you identify them.
I heard that in France, all of the pharmacists are trained in mycology, so anyone, if you're in France, you can bring the mushrooms to a pharmacist and they'll identify them for you.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, we should have that here.
We should.
How many pounds of mushrooms do you pick in an average year?
I have been known to fill my truck in a day, and I would say on the average anywhere from 600 pounds to 1,200 pounds depending on the season, how often I go out. It varies from year to year.
Wow. What's the highest price mushroom?
There are, on average, most of the mushrooms that we pick are around $10 a pound. But there are some that probably range anywhere from $25 to $65 a pound. And then when they're dried, the price goes dramatically higher because, as you know, mushrooms are mostly water. So 90% of their weight is lost during drying. So black trumpets is a good example. I can get probably anywhere from $20 to $40, $50 a pound fresh. Dried, $250 a pound. Yeah, so that's the high end, I guess.
So there are a few different mushroom seasons throughout any given year. What are the different mushroom seasons describing?
You're right. It seems as though as we progress throughout the summer months, different types of mushrooms come and go. So during the early spring, we get morels and pheasantback mushrooms. As the season,
So the ones that smell like watermelon?
Yes. And then as we slowly kind of merge into like midsummer, then the chanterelles, black trumpets, oysters. As we kind of merge into fall, autumn, you get hen of the wood, chicken mushroom, reishi all year long, matsutakis.
Can you tell us about your workshop?
Yeah, I have been for the last 3 years now putting on these workshops that entail 2 PowerPoint presentations. There's over 140 pictures, 4 or 5 video clips, mostly an introduction to my business, some identifying characteristics of certain gourmet species here in Vermont, and also I dabble a little bit in showing people how to cultivate their own gourmet mushrooms. At the end of the workshop, I will hand out oyster mushroom spawn with an instruction sheet on how to grow them out on a really cool, interesting substrate, cardboard. So we can take something that would normally be thrown away or recycled and turn it into food. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the medicinal mushrooms that are found in Vermont?
You have reishi. We also can find turkey tail mushrooms. We can find chaga mushrooms. These are all becoming more involved in scientific research for anti-cancer, antibacterial research.
What are the most dangerous poisonous mushrooms that are found in Vermont?
Okay, you know, I think worldwide mushrooms in the family of Amanita are dangerous. It's just a family to just not experiment with. There's only really one mushroom in the whole family that's probably possibly edible, and it's the Caesar mushroom. So identifying is really tricky. Gallorhina mushrooms is another species, basically falls in the LBM category, so little brown mushrooms. Most of those are either deadly, toxic, hallucinogenic, recreational, and you wouldn't really want to risk your life just to find out, you know. But the Gallorhinas are probably the most deadly mushroom in the world. One the size of your pinky in a soup could probably kill 5 to 10 people. So it's like a very toxic mushroom. And they grow on wood.
What action do they have on the body?
It does something with the enzymes in your liver and kidney. And so basically, you will, if you were to consume one or some, and eventually you would experience severe stomach upset, vomiting, diarrhea. You'd have a short remission, so you'd actually think you're feeling better for a few days, and then it would come back tenfold. Eventually you would need liver or kidney transplant, otherwise you would fall into coma or death. So it's probably not, you know, it's not pleasant. But it's not an immediate toxicity, you know, like where you're not going to die like in an hour or two. It's actually severe, intense pain and irritation. Not that I've experienced it, but.
Are there any gourmet mushrooms that are very easy to identify?
Yeah, chanterelles are pretty easy to identify. Chicken mushroom is very easy to. Giant puffballs are really easy to identify. I personally think oysters are easy to identify. I think a lot of the mushrooms that are not easy to identify are the ones that grow on the ground. So, like when people are hunting for button mushrooms or wild portobellas, these are otherwise known as horse mushrooms or meadow mushrooms. But there's also amanitas that grow in the same areas and can be easily mistaken because of the ring. Sometimes the vulva or the cup, from what they're growing out of, the cap, gill structure, how the cap looks. So I think some of those are probably tricky.
So you wildcraft a lot of mushrooms. Do you actually grow any yourself?
I do grow some oyster mushrooms for a couple of local markets. I grow some shiitake mushrooms. I have a lot of logs on my property, and the logs are infused with mycelium from either oyster or shiitake mushroom. It's really easy for people to grow mushrooms on logs. Log culture, you just need a hammer, a drill, and the spawn. You don't need any extremely expensive equipment such as laminar flow benches or fume hoods. I grow pink oysters, gold oysters, and the blue oyster mushrooms.
So what do you see for the future of Vermush?
You know, I'm hoping to do a lot more workshops for the local areas. You can catch these at most of the co-ops in the area. I'm hoping to branch out a little bit more and possibly expand my business to more cultivation. So it seems as though there's quite a market here in Vermont, being localvore, organic, and yeah, all natural.
Why stop gardening because it's winter? Imagine being able to garden every day of the year, having the benefits of a sunny day without the risk of sunburn.
Knowing what's going into your food from seed to harvest. You can at Green Thumb Gardening and Hydroponics. It's easy, educational, nutritious, and fun for the whole family.
Let GTG Hydroponics show you how to garden in any space indoors or out with interactive living science projects for home or school.
Visit Green Thumb Gardening in person at the corner of Route 15 and Park Street in Underhill, Vermont.
Get hooked on phonics today.